Good morning and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be going over the 5 best professions in 9.0. Now just stick around and enjoy the video. Okay, so today we're going to be going over the 5 best professions in 9.0, and let's be honest really, it's mainly going to be a crafting video for basically crafters. So that being the case, mining, herbalism, skinning and fishing will be off the table as we've already covered their best farms. And I would think that that's a bit redundant right now. So, that being the case, let's get into number 1, which is alchemy. Now, alchemy has always been a very good one in order to actually do, and that's because it can provide you with a lot of profit on raid nights. The things of note that is actually selling rather well with alchemy at this moment in time is the spectral flasks of intellect, agility, stamina, strength, those types of ones, as well as the flasks. The flasks will sell predominantly faster than the potions, as I see, and to be honest, they do sell a hell of a lot on raid night. The thing of note with alchemy at this moment in time is the price of certain different types of herbs. So, some of the herbs are quite cheap, some of them are not, and that being the case is actually causing to actually be a higher value for those pots and flasks. Now, the thing of note that I've actually been doing is I've actually been going over and farming up the highest value herbs. So in my case, it would be Widowbloom. Now, Widowbloom currently is selling on my server for around about 120 to 130 gold a piece. Things that you want to take into consideration when it comes towards this is actually farming to craft. Now, farming to craft is a very profitable way of making gold because you're actually farming up the materials yourself and then you're crafting with that in order to get a profit. Now, aside from all of that, the thing of note that I've been doing with that is obviously farming up the highest value herb, and then I've been buying out the lowest value herb when it comes towards that. So, I've been focusing more of my farming onto Widowbloom and then buying out the rest of the materials to circumvent time invested. So I'm not wasting massive amounts of time. I'm just focusing solely on one particular herb for all of my flasks that are going at a high value rate, and then all of the rest of them I will craft when they're profitable. That being the case, it means that I can keep a steady supply on the auction house and I can actually produce a very strong profit as well and be able to sell those on raid nights as well as that. That being the case, that is alchemy at number 1. Coming in at number 2 is inscription. Now, inscription is doing very well at this moment in time due to the fact of all of the new contracts as well as a load of the missives. These are selling like hotcakes at the moment, and along with your standardized glyph production, you shouldn't have a problem going forward in making a load of gold. Other things of note you can actually make gold is by flipping the cheapest value herb, which is predominantly Death Blossom. That is because it's found all around the world whenever you're doing any form of herb farm. That means it's going to sell for a lower value. That being the case, if you actually mill a Death Blossom, you can get a load of the different types of inks and pigments from that, and that means you can actually sell that on for a decent chunk on the auction house. Alongside that, you are able to use your milling in order to actually reduce the cost if it's profitable, in order to craft the missives and all of the other stuff that do show up red on your TSM. Now, I did do a video about this like a week ago, and it actually works out quite well. As well as that, Worth It has been updated for the flipping module for that, in order to reduce the cost of your inks as well as that. So that is something you can do right there. Other things of note when it comes towards inscription is your Darkmoon decks. They are still selling very well at the moment, but it does take a large capital in order to get started. If you were going to farm up all of these materials, I wouldn't recommend it due to the fact that it costs a lot of Nightshade and a lot of Death Blossom in order to actually get the ball rolling, in order to actually produce that large quantity of inks in order to get yourself started with the Darkmoon decks. The thing of note that I would actually focus on heavily is just by buying out all this stuff, which will require you to have a higher gold invested in order to keep a production of those trinkets up. As they're eye level 200, that works out quite well in the long run. Now, coming in at number 2, and at no surprise, is Enchanting. Enchanting is doing very well at this moment in time. It's actually being one of the profitable ones at this moment in time, hence why it's on the list, of course. But the thing of note that you will actually find quite interesting is by actually buying out the cloth and disenchanting it. By just selling the base materials, just by making loads of the cuffs and also the braces, you can actually produce yourself a lot of steady gold when it comes towards that. You could disenchant like 1,000 a day and still make a profit on that, or even more if you so wished. It just depends on how much time you want to invest. Aside from that, you can use that in order to reduce the cost. Samadam actually did a great video detailing how to actually reduce the cost of the base materials for enchanting in order to make it profitable for yourselves, and I'd highly recommend watching that video, as I'll leave a link to that in the description down below, because quite frankly, enchanting is an insanely good profession, and what you would need to do is just looking at that video. Samadam is the person I go to when it comes towards making gold with enchanting, and that's because he is just on top of it, if you know what I'm saying. Very good at what he does when it comes towards enchanting and TSM strings in general. Aside from all of that, enchanting is doing very well with a lot of the rare recipes. So basically any of the rare recipes, so like the blue ones, you'll be wanting to craft those. Those ones sell for the highest amount of value, and they sell incredibly fast in the grand scheme of things. The only thing that's going to slow down your production is the disenchanting, so if you don't have enough time to actually produce that, I would just only craft the stuff that is profitable. And of course, if you do end up disenchanting for your materials to reduce the cost in order to get a profit, then that is probably the best bet in order to make a lot of gold with enchanting thus far. The things of note that are actually quite worth it at this moment in time, coming in at number 4, is blacksmithing. And blacksmithing is doing really well at this moment in time. No surprise right there, but it is the crafted legendary stuff. So what you'll be wanting to do is by crafting up those crafted legendaries in order to actually sell on the auction house. They're going from anywhere from like 16,000 all the way up to like 80,000 gold, depending on the eye level of that crafted legendary. And overall, it's doing relatively well. A lot of the crafted blues that actually sell quite well for eye levels is doing incredibly well as well, and they're quite cheap to actually produce. That is something you can do right there. I do recommend blacksmithing, but the only barrier to entry is the crafted legendaries. You will need to be level 60 in order to actually learn those, in order to actually produce them on a mass scale. So I'd highly recommend going ahead and doing that before moving forward on all that stuff. Now, coming in at number 5 is jewel crafting. Jewel crafting came at a bit of a surprise for me, but it's doing incredibly well. This is because of mass prospecting. Mass prospecting gives you the ability to actually prospect a load of ore. In my case, it would be lacerite ore. It actually produces you with a lot of the 3 gems, which actually are able to be crafted into different types of rings for your base stats for just getting started. So like once you're like leveled up, you can actually craft those rings, and then you can sell those on the auction house because people are more likely to buy those as they just want to just get their eye levels up just a little bit more. The other things of note that you can do with this is the crafted ring, the legendary ring, but this will require you to be level 60 in order to craft. So hence why you will need to actually level up your characters. You can't just stay at level 50 in order to actually do that type of production. Hence why I'm going to be focusing heavily on my leveling for all of my characters. Basically not going to stop over the Christmas period for actually leveling up all of my characters so we can actually produce more gold in the long run. Aside from all of that, I do find that jewel crafting is quite good with just flat mass prospecting at this moment. Or the essences. The essences sell for a hefty chunk of gold, and that is what is actually bringing in the decent flipping rates for that, because they sell relatively fast in the grand scheme of things, and it produces you with a lot of gold in the long run. Other than that, that is pretty much my breakdown for the 5 best professions that are doing quite well when in regards to crafting in 9.0. Overall, I find these professions to be doing very, very well in the grand scheme of things, and we can likely see these ones progressing into the future. The only one that I would say may not stay the same is probably dual crafting, but other than that, the rest of them will probably stay relatively well as raids progress and come out and as the expansion rolls out. So it's something you definitely want to get in on sooner rather than later. Other than that, guys, have an awesome rest of the day, and I shall see you in the next video, which will be tomorrow. If you want to support the channel and help make the channel even better, then why not check out the Patreon? Members get additional info, gold making resources, and Patreon specific content. The link is located in the description down below. Thank you and have an awesome day.